it's a good thing that our country has conservatives and progressives. So I try not to get into politics too much on this channel or on my Facebook page, although if you follow me on Facebook, you know I succumb to that way too often. But the thing is, I think it's important. And it's because it's a representation of our society. And I don't mean that, like, the president, whatever he or she thinks, is what everyone else thinks. I just mean it is a representation of our society, and even if the winning side is not as a whole, it does say a lot about where we're at and what we think. And I think it's really important to analyze and understand, especially because we have the great privilege of living in a democracy, and luckily most of the world, or a lot of the world, has become democratized, and even the communist countries are less authoritarian than they ever have been. So I think this is great, and it's a good time to be active as a citizen and understanding what's going on. And I know there's a lot of division over politics in America right now. And it feels like it's new, but it's not. There has been for a long time this growing divide between what we call conservatives and liberals or progressives in the United States, probably ever since the 1930s. And there's a really interesting video on Vox, which Vox definitely leans more towards the progressive liberal side, but this video has nothing to do with either side. It's just more about, like, the political science of, like, why this is happening. And I really suggest, it's about 20 minutes or something like that. I really suggest you watch it if you're really interested in this kind of thing. I will add a link to it at the end of the video. I'll remind you to go watch that then. So finish watching this video first. But the thing I want to talk about is why it's not the end of the world that Donald Trump is the president, if that's how you think, and why you should be more skeptical of the current Republican administration if you're on that side. You know, I kind of end up in the middle. I've kind of sometimes leaned more conservative and sometimes leaned more progressive. And it usually seems like whatever the current administration is, I'm kind of leaning the other way. The thing is, I keep just seeing this pendulum swing. So when Bush was president, and whenever Bush was president and the Republicans actually had control of the House and the Senate, there was very much this idea that they were the speakers for everyone in America. They thought that, like, they had this destiny and they had the voice of America was theirs. Meanwhile, there were the Democrat side that were viciously fighting against them to gain power back, and they felt like they had been wronged. They hadn't gotten as far as people saying, "is not my president yet," even though Bush was elected definitely by some questionable circumstances in 2000. But move on to 2008, whenever Obama was elected, and the pendulum shift the entire other way. And then you have all of these Republicans and conservatives saying this phrase of "not my president," and it drives me crazy, because now I see now that the pendulum has swung back the other way, and that's just how democracy is, especially when we have a country that's so divided. And I'll talk about that in a minute, about how we got so divided and why we are that way. But now the same thing is being said about Donald Trump, and I wrote a little article a couple of days ago called "I'm a Progressive and Donald Trump is my president." I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I would never have voted for Donald Trump. I don't think he's qualified for the position. But honestly, I don't think he was that much worse than any of the other options. And that's the problem. A big problem is that we're not being as accountable in our primary process as we should. That's a whole different thing. But really, the whole thing is the ideology. And to say, oh, it's the politicians' fault that there's this gridlock, if you look around to your neighbors, and maybe even you, it's not just them that are being so divisive. If you right now are saying, Donald Trump's not my president, I hope Donald Trump gets assassinated, things like that, that's exactly what people were saying about Obama in 2008. That's where this divide comes from. It's you. It's me, it's you, it's anyone that utters those kind of things. And I get it. The policies that Obama or Trump or the Republicans or the Democrats in the Senate and the House and the Supreme Court, the things that they're doing might feel like they're an attack on you. And maybe they do affect you in really direct ways. And I know that for sure. I know people that, because of the Affordable Care Act, myself included, were able to get life-saving coverage that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. Some people had surgeries that they literally might not be alive right now if it wasn't for the Affordable Care Act. So if we want to talk to the Republicans about, value in total life years saved, because they want to talk about abortions and stuff like that, and to be fair, I kind of lean towards that pro-life side of abortions. I don't think it's my decision to make, though. Then the Affordable Care, like, why do we cut the line off whenever the baby's born? And I get it. The Affordable Care Act is irresponsible, and it's not what it was supposed to be. But you know why that is? Is because the Republican Senate and Congress refused to work with the Democrats whenever they tried to pass it, so they had to basically kneel down to the lobbyists from the insurance agencies, and basically it became a bill that really helped the insurance agencies. All that said, these things might be affecting you directly, but they are not a personal attack on you. They are people, you have to understand that these are other people that feel like they've been attacked. They feel like their rights and the things that matter to them have been attacked for the last 8 years, maybe longer. And the only way to really heal as a country, that we're ever going to move forward, is if we stop biting back and forth and acting out of fear and acting out of defensiveness. If we're trying to defend ourselves from our fellow Americans, we've already failed as a country. And that's like the thing that I really want to stress here is you can do better. The politicians are accountable to us. And it might not seem like it a lot of the time, but they are. And just because your neighbors and you don't support what the current administration is doing, there are people out there that do. Almost 50% of the country support that. So just think about that next time you say that you think the president should be assassinated or something. It just disgusts me to hear this kind of thing. And I get it. I get that you're afraid, and I get that you feel personally attacked. But that's not the way to go about this. And if you are a progressive or a liberal or a Democrat or whatever you want to call yourself, and you are now saying the same things that conservatives and Republicans and Tea Partiers were saying back in 2008, you are part of the problem now. And I get it. It sucks for you. Like, we think that we've made this progress and now it's gonna take some steps back. But that's a good thing. And I want to talk about that for a second real quick. I'm not going to make this video too long. I'm almost done. But the thing that I want to stress here is that it's a good thing that our country has conservatives and progressives, because if we were just a progressive country, we would move ahead so quickly. Some of the things that the progressives have put through are susceptible to corruption, and that's always the case, it seems like, when progressives are passing bills. And they allow for the federal government to expand so quickly that we could get an Orwellian future with the government. And that's obviously an exaggeration. I think people that really think that that's a little absurd. Possible, sure, and it's good to be vigilant. It's really ironic that there's sirens going off after I said that. They're coming to get me. But the point I'm trying to make is be a little more positive. The conservative movement keeps things at a steady pace if you balance it against the progressive movement that tries to move things forward. Things will move forward, but there will be this idea of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, forever. That's how history has always been. And to think that we can just magically change that now, or that we should change that now, is absurd. So you just need to accept the fact that, like, just because it feels like you're being personally attacked, and I don't care if I'm talking to you in 4 years from now or 8 years from now, when the pendulum has shifted back towards liberals and progressives and you're a conservative, I'm going to be saying the same thing to you. Like, it's good that we have both sides of this, and please stop hating people that think differently than you. It's totally okay. It's not that they're wrong and that their facts are wrong, although sometimes that definitely can be true on both sides. But the big thing is where their ethics come from and where your morals come from. And that is the great part of living in a democracy, is that we have a say in the national morals, and they're not just stuck in stone. They swing. They're a pendulum. They're fluid. And that might be scary, and when the system doesn't seem to be working in your favor or your morals' favor, it seems like the end of the world. Well, guess what? It's the pendulum's gonna swing back your way, especially if you keep fighting for it. It's gonna swing back. It's inevitable, and it's happened since the beginning of this country. It's happened since the beginning of democracy. It's happened since the beginning of civilization. Take yourself out of the moment a little bit and look at the big picture here, and think about how much better off everybody, for the most part, everybody in the world, not just the United States, but the world, the standard of living right now is massively high compared to any time throughout history. So just because some of your rights might feel like they're under pressure, you at least have the right to try to fight for those. You at least have that right. You at least have probably running water, maybe a house over your head. You know, there's a lot of stuff, and you live in a country that you can have one of these if you can afford it. You can have a job. You can change jobs. Like, there's all these things that are like benefits that really only came into existence in the last few hundred years. So don't take those for granted. Stay positive and make the change that you want to see happen. Complaining is not going to do anything. I hope this was a little useful to some of you. I really hope people start thinking of it this way more often. I'll see you in the next video.